Good morning, good afternoon, and a very good evening to wherever in the world you may be. Today, I wanted to take a look at what has long been considered a great pastime all the world over, and that is, of course, knocking back a few good beverages of choice at your local. It can't be denied that drinking is indeed something of a lifestyle to some, and a brief escape to others. But here in Britain, where we have something of a reputation based around our drinking habits, it's fair to say that it means a lot more to some people than simply having a get-together with friends, drowning our sorrows and later dancing topless on the tables. So, why is there such a vision of sorts around England and the rest of Britain in this way? Well, to maybe better understand, let us delve into the history of the traditional British boozer, shall we? Yes, the image of the drunken Brit causing chaotic outrage within our pubs today may seem like something that is becoming more and more of a common spectacle of sorts, but if you were to compare today's drinking habits with days of old, many of today's regular pub-goers might find the competition to be quite intimidating. Let's start with the history of the British old pub. There are a handful of establishments that claim to be the oldest, the main one being Ye Olde Fighting Cocks in St. Albans, which has been proven to be serving alcohol in 793 AD. The oldest named pub is Ye Olde Man and Scythe, which name has existed since 1251, although the building itself was completely rebuilt. The original pubs would have been Roman taverns and wine houses set up after the invasion on Britain. As the Roman influence died in Britain later, the Anglo-Saxons took over and introduced the traditional ale made from malt and hops to make distinct flavours. Typically, a Saxon would make an ale in his home. When the brew was ready, the alewife would put a green brush on a long wooden pole and erect it outside their home. That's one way to get attention. This would signal to the village and the villagers to come around and drink till it was gone. Then they waited for the next home to have a brew ready. Not bad, eh? In 965 AD, drinking houses were so popular that King Edgar limited the number to allowing one per village. In 1393, King Richard II made it mandatory for all pubs to have a distinct sign outside it so ale tasters could easily recognize and sample the beer. A job once held by William Shakespeare's father, would you believe? Yes. By 1577, a tax census revealed 14,202 ale houses, 1,631 inns, and 329 taverns, resulting there being one pub for every 189 persons. Thereafter, alehouses would brew their own until the late 17th century, where nearly all ale became commercially available and breweries became independent from alehouses. In the 18th century, alehouses were in competition with gin houses at this time. It was depicted how the normal working classes would drink calmly in the alehouses, whilst gin houses became places for the bawdy and the lower class ruffians. This was due to gin being brought into the country for cheap by the Dutch, and its high alcohol content made bad living conditions seem more bearable. In 1830, the gin houses were causing too much trouble, so the government issued licenses for beer houses to open for £2. That's about £173 in today's money, and since selling beer was highly profitable, it became more popular yet again. All they had to do was simply turn a room into a beer lounge. It would have had seating and serving barrels stacked up in a corner, and well, basically you're ready to go from there. These were only licensed to sell beer, and a further license was needed to sell other beverages. This led to the evils of the gin houses becoming extinct for a time, and 46,000 beer houses were set up, in no time. So during the 19th century, beer houses declined in popularity again as taxes on breweries were being commissioned and policies were introduced where alcohol could only be sold between certain times, never on a Sunday, because apart from cannibal cracker bread along with a glass of wine, God of course didn't approve of this. Also, both world wars saw a decline in population, so fewer people, particularly men, weren't going out drinking, obviously. Talk about dead on your feet, eh? As the 60s came into full swing, fully licensed pubs became increasingly popular due to the taboo of women not drinking, becoming a thing of the past. More options like imported beers and lagers became more widely available, and the government invested in making a more competitive beer market. It's almost as though they saw an avenue of making more money to tax and fill their pockets with, isn't it? It's funny, that. But, alas, since the late 1980s, pubs have started to decrease again. In 1980, there were about 68,000 pubs registered within the British Beer and Pub Association. Well, that figure dropped to 51,000 in 2015. So a drop of 17,000 pubs, resulting in closures in 30 years. Well, why is this? In the 90s, there was a rise in gastropubs. That's pubs serving alcohol and serving restaurant-style type food. This became popular, and it became customary for most pubs to offer food. Those that didn't keep up with the trend instead ending up under the table. There was also a proven correlation when the smoking ban inside public buildings came into effect in 2007. The rate of pubs closing hit 7,000 in just 2 years. This stopped a lot of people being able to get out and just enjoy a drink and smoke at that time. The following year, in 2008, the biggest recession hit since the 30s, and people had less money to go out with. Prices also went up so pubs could cover the cost of their bills, so I do tip my hat to the landlords who survived those harsh 2 years. It must have been very difficult to pull through it. That being said, young people today are supposedly smoking and drinking less, so make what you will of that. Anyway, according to the BBPA, 39 million barrels of beer was sold in the year 2000, and 33 million in 2017. 6 million is quite a substantial drop, but many may argue it is a good thing that people are looking more after their health. It's just a pity that a British cultural pastime is decreasing as a result of it, especially when what you put in your own body, regardless, is of course up to yourself. If someone wants to drink their life away, that's up to them. Don't spoil it for others who can handle their drink. But yes, instead, the young chicklins of society are opting for coffee shops like Starbucks and Costa, and quick eateries like Greg's to support a busy and so much healthier lifestyle. Not only that, but city nightclubs are the main scene now for weekend drinking in particular. Each to their own, but a club is less socially interacting, as you can barely hear each other bloody talk for one thing, and it's a lot more expensive, averaging to around £6 a pint compared to the average of £3 in the local. As well as young people, the demographics of people in Britain is also changing. It would seem logical that with the rising population there would be a high demand for pubs in general. However, that doesn't seem to be the case. Some economists quietly put some responsibility on Britain becoming more multicultural. Muslims and Sikhs, for example, are forbidden from drinking alcohol according to their religious texts, despite how many of them I've seen drop this rule when it suits them, and I can say I've witnessed that firsthand. Nevertheless, these are the fast two growing religions within the UK. It's natural to see an 18% decrease in the public drinking alcohol, although they could still go to a pub and have a soft drink or even a meal. It's too much to ask, but as always seems the way, Britain would rather change itself rather than expect others to change. Furthermore, in 2017, the duty tax on alcohol rose an average of 9 pence a pint throughout the country, and pub rates had increased, passing this cost on to the customer. So now in pubs a pint can cost around £3 when a 4-pack of beer would only cost £4 in a local off-licence. And if you were to drink a litre bottle in a pub, it would cost around £84 to drink the whole bottle. Yes, a bit steep when the local supermarket sells it for around £15. So why do we put up with these prices? Well, a pub is simply British. Every village, town and city has one. They come in all shapes and sizes. Some are modern, some older than the birth of America. Some are basic, some are themed. Somewhere there's a pub for everyone, basically. You just need to go out, explore, and you'll find what suits you. That being said, let's go through some pub etiquette. There seems to be a few rites of passage, so to speak, which goes unspoken, but they occur in every pub around the country. Well, the first of these being, if you're a tourist or a British citizen who lives under a rock, the first thing you'll notice is the service bar. So don't expect a waiter to come and take your order. You have to go up to the bar and place your order and carry it back to the table, which can be an art form in itself, believe me, I know. Number 2. When at the bar, hold your money out on the bar indicating you want serving. Never yell or demand attention unless you're a local. You will get some hard stares, I'll tell you. And depending on the bar staff, you may get a boot up the backside. Number 3. When you get to the bar, you may be greeted by the barmaid with one of the following phrases. You all right? Or, what can I get you? That's just my impression of a woman there. Not very good. Anyway, moving on. Number 4. In response to this, never just order a beer. Depending on the pub, a beer could be lager, beer, ale, stout, porter, anything basically on tap. Usually as well, they'll just give you the most expensive beverage they have on. It's better to ask specifically for what you want. Number 5. If you're trying something new, ask for a taster. These are usually free, or in some of the more posh twatty pubs they may ask for some pennies, but basically still cheap. Number 6. Don't anger the regulars. Oh God. Chances are they've been drinking the same beer at the same time in the same spot since the Queen's bloody coronation, and they won't move for a nuclear bomb dropping, I can tell you. Number 7. When you order, remember we order in pints, which is larger than most other countries' measurements. Alternatively, you can order a half, but, well, what's the point in that? It's no fun, is it? Number 8. If someone buys you a round, they mean a round of drinks, which is everyone, and they will expect the same back. And number 9. Closing time is typically 20 minutes after the bell rings, but you'll find this can be stretched. And last, number 10. Typical snacks at these bars, pubs, are crisps, pork scratchings, and maybe sandwiches or cobs. If you don't know what pork scratchings are, then I encourage you to try them, just maybe don't ask what's in them. If you have a packet of crisps, then officially you are supposed to tear the packet open so that the whole table has access to them and can help themselves. Well, there's a fair few fun rules for you to take in. Not exclusively all the rules, but just a handful of the basics. It's as if a pub has its own unspoken language, as I said before, but don't let that daunt you. It's quite easy to feel the atmosphere once you're in there. With that, let's look at why we should go in the first place. Well, the pub is a communal ground for friends, locals, and in some places the whole villages. Towns even. They typically sell beers, wine, spirits, soft drinks and food. They offer a social ambience which you certainly don't get in a bloody club blasting what young people call music these days. Plus some pubs also offer activities such as darts, snooker, pub quizzes, along with a whole list of all sorts of different pastimes. With so much going on, it's no wonder Samuel Pepys described pubs as the heart of England. Now, cheers to that, I say. And like I said before, pubs come in many forms depending on age and location. Modern or redesigned pubs tend to have one open room with chairs, tables set along the edges around the bar. However, some older style pubs will have separate rooms which were to divide the classes of society. There would have been a lounge or saloon type room where you would have either paid a fee to get in or pay extra on drinks. These rooms had cushions on the seats, carpets, and some had entertainment on. Then there would be a tap or public rooms, it was known. Here there would be hard wooden bench seats, bare floorboards covered in sawdust, typically to catch any spillages, and a snug room which was usually covered in frosted glass around the bar hatch, so only the hands could be seen to exchange money for a pint. This was so nobody saw your face behind the bar, and was used by people who wouldn't normally be expected to be seen in a pub, such as, at certain times, through the ages, women, or the local vicar, say, or a rich, classy gentleman. There are also many types of pubs. There are free houses, which are owned by individuals who usually live within the pub itself. Tied houses, which is owned by a pub company and is ran by a manager. Brew pubs, which brew and sell their own beer on the same site, speaks for itself, really. Country pubs, which in the countryside areas, would you believe, and usually offer food. Road houses, which cater for coaches, and the fairly new upcoming micro pubs, of course. Yeah, sticking on the topic of micro pubs, these seem to be becoming more popular, with a 67% increase in the past 5 years. Usually they will have their own brewery attached to them, creating a unique cask beer or ale. They are traditionally a lot smaller, usually, hence the name, just one tight room and the bar. This promotes conversation, and usually they don't allow the use of electronic equipment. And yes, that includes mobile phones, of which you will often see a number of actually nailed into the walls or the beams of some micropubs. Owners enjoy it as they are open less hours often, and relish a 50% tax reduction if they produce under so many hectolitres of ale. Interesting to see how this is a very similar layout to the beer houses I mentioned earlier. Pubs are also infamous for their interesting names and sign artwork. Pub signage is so popular that there are businesses and artists dedicated to the unique artwork entirely. Here are a few famous and funny ones. Since the number of pubs are declining, though, there are a number of independent groups who help preserve and promote the importance of pubs in our culture. One of the main ones, of course, being CAMRA, standing for the Campaign for Real Ale, who has over 187,000 members, and was started in 1971, I believe, to promote pubs, ales, and more recently ciders. It is one of the oldest campaigns in the UK and runs a successful string of ale festivals around the UK to help support local ales and pubs and promotion and such. They also produce a good beer guide which lists the supposed best pubs within the UK according to their experts, people who go around and visit them to verify this. There is also a group in the West Midlands, I believe, called the BATS, standing for the Black Country Ale Tasters, led by leader Peter Hill, who takes a group of friends around the UK with the aim of drinking in as many pubs as possible. Since 1984 they have visited over 20,000 pubs, many of which are shut now, of course, and have had at least 1 point in each one. Yes. Also, there is the Red Lioness, a lady from Preston, Kathy Price, who is known for visiting every pub named the Red Lion throughout the country, and now has her own self-titled unofficial pub. So we've discussed the history and cultural impact of the British pub. Let's just evaluate the positive impacts this British pastime has. A 2016 university study found pubgoers to be more sociable with face-to-face conversations as opposed to constant use of mobile phone messaging. The study found that pubs encourage moderate drinking as they have a more relaxed atmosphere rather than a club which of course promotes drinking. Also, if you are a regular, then you are more likely to drink in moderation, not excessively, which science has proven that small amounts of alcohol is good for releasing endorphins to help relax the mind and body. And also, camera surveys suggest that people are more likely to use a pub if they hold charity events. 85% of pubs engage in these events, raising an average of £270 a year per pub. Now, you just do the maths on that. The main beneficiaries being Help for Heroes, Air Ambulance, Cancer Research, and of course the ever-popular Profound Poppy Appeal. Oh, my God, try saying that after a few whiskies. Anyway, there are a few negatives of pubs as well, unfortunately, but I have to mention it. Unofficially, there is also another type of pub. The Dreg pub, as it is often known, also known as the Dump or Den. There are numerous news reports of pubs being police raided and closed down due to them being flooded with locals who are heavily into drug dealing or knowingly allowing weapons to be brought in, and there are some estate pubs that just attract the self-rejected retrobates of society, or as I like to call them, knuckle-draggers, who have yet to discover fire, basically. These types of pubs give a bad name, and if your local is one of these, then I encourage you to go and find a decent drinking hole. And if that doesn't interest you, then you're probably in the right company, so you just stay put. Well, that's about it for the negative side of things, really. On that note, let's end on a few fun, random, but seemingly pointless facts you may remember to strike up in a pub conversation yourself one day. Here's one for you. All pubs licensed in 1780 were called Royal George to celebrate the 12th year of reign of George III. Another one. Most popular pub names are the Red Lion, the Crown, the Royal Oak, and the White Horse. The remotest pub in the country is the Old Forge in Ivary, Scotland. It's an 18-mile walk alone across mountains with no road access just to get to it. Well, let's hope they have a good selection on the polls when you get there. Also in the country there is one pub with no name. Well, so I can't really say much more about that, can I? The shortest pub name is Q. Yes, Q. That's where it begins and that's where it ends. And the longest pub name is the Old 13th Cheshire Astley Volunteer Rifleman Corps Inn. God. The Smith's Arms also is the smallest freestanding pub. How about that? Well, there you go. If nothing else, they may come in use in a pub quiz one day. And with that being said, I'm off to my local to sample my favourite drink of choice. A double brandy and double Bailey's mix, with just a couple of cubes of ice to settle on top. Or as I like to call it anyway, liquid sex. So, I leave you with your thoughts, sober or soused. And until next time, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, as always, have a very good night from wherever in the world you may be. And cheers.
In the morning when we first got up, we found some beer and we had a little sup. We drank for our dinner until 3:30. We are the drunk and disorderly. Drink, drink, whoever you may be. We are the drunk and disorderly. And we'll drink more beer wherever we may be. And we'll meet you all in the pub city. Hey! To the restaurant, it didn't seem right. Found some food, but we didn't have a pint. Along came a waiter with a long white list. We drank all that and we all got in the pub said hey, hey! Drank on the bitter, we drank on the stout. Drank so much that the gaffer threw us out. We went to my brother's where the beer was free. We are the drunk and disorderly. Drink, drink, whoever you may be. We are the drunk and disorderly. And we'll drink more beer whenever we may be. And we'll meet you all in the pub, said he. Hey! We drank in the morning when we first got up. We found some beer and we had a little sup. We drank for our dinner until 3:30. We are the drunk and disorderly. Drink, drink, whoever you may be. We are the drunk and disorderly. And we'll drink more beer whenever we may be. And we'll meet you all in the one more time. Drink, drink, whoever you may be. We are the drunk and disorderly. And we'll drink more beer whenever we may be. And we'll meet you all in the pub, said